There is this poem by Baba Taher, I think around the 12th or 13th century. And it's a poem that when we had gatherings, music gatherings, I would sing all the time. به کشت خاطرم جز غم نرویه، به باغم جز گل ماتم نرویه، به صحرای دل بی حاصل ما گیاه ناامیدی هم نرویه. It's like in the garden of my imagination, nothing but sadness grows. I mean, Baba Taher is a guy who belonged to a very unique group of Sufis, I'm just sitting, and sure, I mean, his temperament was an introvert, an intense introvert at that. Why would someone, in their 40s or 50s or 60s, someone who belonged to a path that's supposed to give meaning to life, supposed to be profoundly spiritual, why would they say something like that? Why can't they inject something valuable in physical life? That he says, not in my imagination, nothing but sadness grows. به باغم جز گل ماتم نرویه. I'm always confused, bewildered, in awe. به صحرای دل بی حاصل ما, that in this like soul or heart of mine, not even the flower of hopelessness grows. And it may be, part of the Middle Eastern or Persian temperament that comes up with such poems. Even I think if you were to take your question all the way back from the 3rd century Christian era all the way to maybe the 14th century or so, where life is viewed as a veil of tears, and life is just bad, you can't find happiness, your question would be, well, how can I make life down here happy, purposeful, meaningful? Go to church and pray, because there is nothing else you can do except Jesus Christ in your life. There's also another aspect which is kind of dark and bleak and gloomy to your question. When you go to your companion and you say, how can we make our relationship better? What you're saying is, our relationship is bad, or at least it's in trouble, or I'm not happy, or it's just not working for me. Your question is really, really good, but you have all these other things behind the question that you haven't really spoken of, but they're there. And so when someone says, how can I make my life more meaningful? It means, well, there are these moments you look at life and you realize it's really quite bad. And so you want to fix it. Imagine, since you're an instructor, someone comes to you near the end of the semester, they haven't attended too many classes, they haven't done too many assignments, and they come to you and say, Professor Colum, I was wondering, how can I pass this class? You say, listen, we've been here for about 15 weeks, you've missed about 12 weeks, we've had 10 assignments, you've missed 11. and now you want to make the last 2 weeks work. It's possible, but here's what you need to do. You have to read about 500 pages. You have to watch about 30 hours of videos and listen to about 40 hours of audios, and then write about 2,500 page essays. Can you do that? With plagiarism, yes. To do honest work, the answer is no. When you approach something with poverty, that is, when you don't have the answers, it's very difficult to know what to do with the question, except kind of just be okay to live in confusion and negative emotions for a long, long time until something happens, you know. And I think once you become infected with separating yourself from life, examining it from a distance, when that becomes, part of your identity, almost everything falls apart. Because you're supposed to be in life, not outside of it. There is a story about Leno, and I think all of you know who he is. And apparently, his wife had mentioned to him that they should go to Hawaii for vacation, and so he says, okay. So he goes with his kids, and he's sitting by the ocean, and his wife and kids are shopping, and he says, well, I looked at my watch, it was 10 in the morning. So I was just looking and enjoying the water and the sun and the sand and the this and the that. Then after a few minutes, I got tired. I looked at my watch, it was like 10:15. I said to myself, man, I have to be here for another 3 weeks. I said, okay, well, I looked at the water some more, and then I looked at the people some more, and then I looked at my watch again, and I realized it was like 10:25. Only like 5 minutes had passed. And he said there came a point, it was like 10:45. He said, I called my wife and I said, I'm flying back to Los Angeles to go on my show. I can't stay here. And that's, I think, one of the remedies that you may have, which is if you have found your passion to be in the classroom, or if you have found your passion to be music, or writing, or cooking, that's how you give value to time. That's what you need to do to make time valuable. If you haven't done anything that's useful, if there are no stages for you, then it's nearly impossible. I guess after all of this rambling, I don't really know. I don't know what's... I'm sure all the people who wrote these books, they had a relatively interesting time, maybe in a good time. I glance through them and I just see fluff. I am beyond, looking at a book and enjoying a paragraph that looks good. It doesn't do much for me. Especially when you know how books are written. You're just inspired, then you sit, and then you write, and then it's finished. Yeah. Good luck with all of that, Alison. You know, you get all these boxers, Manny Pacquiao, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, Mike Tyson. You know, they were really good at their prime. They made lots of money. They had fame. Then there comes a point where physically you just can't do boxing anymore, professional boxing, you know, for 12 rounds. It's too much. Then you retire. And you have all this money. Then all of a sudden, you know, you're just listening to news and they say, Manny Pacquiao has decided to fight some guy who's like 20 years younger than he is. And then you say to yourself, well, is he nuts? You know, he's got millions of dollars. He can take his family, you know, around the world. He can do all sorts of things. Why would he want to go back into the ring and get punched in the head? You know, why? He's like 40-some. Because, you know, for the longest time in his life, for about 20 years, maybe longer even, he found meaning in the ring. You know, it's such a blessing, Alison, to find yourself in a tiny little ring with an opponent facing you. And you have all these people surrounding the ring, applauding, screaming. And it's intense, you know, 12 rounds, each 3 minutes. And you do this for 20 years and then you retire. What can life offer you, really, that can be as intense as the ring? Nothing. You know? You know, your question is so problematic. It's a great question, but it is such a difficult thing to wrestle with. What was it, the book that Camus had written? The Plague? No, it was A Stranger. You know, here's a guy who just does things, doesn't think about anything. You know, someone says to him, do you want to marry? He says, I don't really care, you want to get married, fine. So you have two kind of lives, you know. His name is Mousseau, where for the, you know, most of the book, it's like there is no substance inside this man. He just does things. And he doesn't feel responsible for any of it. He just does it. It happened. There is no will in him. But he is engaged in life in a very passive way. Near the end of the book, he is forced to think. And he hates it. You know, it's like you fall in love. You react to certain, you know, brain chemistry and sensory experiences, and you are in love. You become blind to so many things. And time passes, and gradually, you know, the blinders are removed, and little by little you begin to see. And the things you see, you begin to think about. And when you think about them, the conclusions you reach are not going to be fun. And then you have to sit back and ask yourself, is it better to kind of just be blind and be happy, or to see and not be happy? You know, whenever we're around the kids, you try to watch our language. You try to protect their innocence and naivete as long as you possibly can. I think people should approach philosophy and reflection the same way. Because, you know, just because you run into someone who's 40 or 30, it doesn't mean that they're adults. You know, they have a grown body. They may have a job, a house, some money, and some power in the social world. But you shouldn't mistake that for thinking that they're adults now. And I think when you think of it this way, you watch what you say to them. Because I don't want a 5-year-old kid to use the S word or the F word. It's too early for them. At least I don't want to be the culprit. Life will eventually teach them that. You know, I don't want to be the first one teaching them those words. I don't think Socrates has any right to, for example, go to my father, who's had a relatively good relationship with my mom, and ask him, why did you marry her? Or what is love? You know, why would you want to have children in this world? Are you a good parent? Do you know what tools to give your kids? I think it's a cruel thing to do. I think like any craft that's specialized and is kind of just kept within the inner circle of those people, it should just be kept there, you know. But that's not the way things work. And it shouldn't. You know, when you read, what is that book, The Strange Life of Ivan Osiken? I don't know if you've looked at it recently, but I think it's chapter 24 or so, where Osiken runs into a magician and comes to realize that, you know, he's been running in circles most of his life. And the magician tells him near the end that, I can help you. I know you're tired of just running after your own tail on a daily basis, and we've done it for the past 20 years, but I can help you stop doing that. I can make your life more meaningful. And he says, well, how can I do that? He says, it's easy. Since you were going to waste your life, why don't you give it to me for 5 years, maybe 10 years? You know, and it's an, I think, interesting way of looking at things. You know, this piece of land can't just tell you, I'm tired of growing weeds, I want to grow something else. So, well, you know, you can't really do it on your own. Let me take care of it for you. She says, okay, well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to turn you upside down. Well, is that going to hurt? Probably. Will I be okay? Well, that's really uncertain. And I think human beings are very much the same way. That if you come to realize that you can't really do anything with your time, give it to someone. Let them exploit you. Inject things into your time. But for that to happen, you have to find yourself gravitating towards someone and then liking them enough to allow them to abuse you, because that's what it is. Daughter of Fire is nothing but 800 pages of abuse. When you read the Gospels, for example, every person who follows Jesus Christ spends less time with their family. That's quite abusive. You're taking away somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's son. And he keeps, kind of putting things inside you. And because you like this fellow, well, you can't but like, all the things that he does to you. You have the classroom, use it well. Some 30 years ago, I was washing this woman's car. She had like 4 kids, and she was looking for money she couldn't find. And I said to her, I'll just wash your car, don't worry about it. And so she says, thank you very much, and all that. And then she goes to use the vacuum, her quarter gets stuck, got stuck in the machine. And she comes to me angrily. Your machine stole my money. I want my money back. I was thinking to myself, I just gave you a free car wash, and you come back to me in this particular way. If you have lived in poverty for a long, long time, thank you is no longer part of your vocabulary. If you think you have the stamina of serving and never receiving a thank you, then you'll be fine. I can do favors for my students once in a while. You need an extension, fine. You know what? Don't even do this assignment. But there comes a point where they become abusive. They just won't do anything, and they expect to pass the class with a B or an A. And then after a while you say, you know what? I'm just not going to pass anyone. And you become callous, you become indifferent. You know, the very people sometimes you try to help eventually will push you to become uncaring.